You are going to want to stick around for this episode as we get into books that changed our lives. So, Steve, how did books change your life?
Eric's great question. So this is going to take me way back, several decades now, into my late teens. So in my late teens, I had my first experience with network marketing. I'm not going to talk really about network marketing in and of itself because that was a completely disaster for me. However, what came of that was probably one of the most powerful learning experiences in my life.
Interesting. All right. Well, more on that in a moment. But first,
hello, I'm Steve.
And I'm Eric. And together we are two dads with one mission.
Welcome to the 𝗙𝗵𝗿𝗀 podcast. This is the show for dads, all about fatherhood, faith, and freedom, one conversation at a time.
So on this week's episode, we're going to get into the power of books. So, Steve, you had mentioned network marketing and something about some process or something you learned there that left an impression on you. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, for sure, Eric. So, hey, I'm going back to the late 80s, early 90s here, and my first experience with network marketing. And as I said, it was a completely disaster. But what came from it is they had an education arm. And as part of that education arm, there was this book reading list. Yeah. And that's when I first entered into the personal development space. And the very, very first book that I read was How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that book completely transformed the way I would communicate with people. So even to this day, the one thing that resonates with me from that book, Eric, is that people like to hear their own names, don't they, Eric?
I do like that, Steve.
Yeah, and I went around pretty much after reading that and many other themes and concepts.
Well, you know, real quick, if I could interject. So everybody's probably had that experience where you're walking in a shopping mall or at a county fair and like all the noise and everything, but then all of a sudden you know somebody calls out a name that happens to be your name, and it's like boom, you hear it immediately. That's the proof of the power of using people's names.
Yeah, exactly. It's all keyed into what we'll probably do on a future episode, so stay tuned for that one. It's all part of the reticular activating system.
That's right.
We're not here for now. But yeah, people love their own names. And I purposefully use that with positive intent and would use people's names wherever possible in new scenarios where I would meet people. You know, right. I would make an effort to introduce into the conversation their name.
And it's a great way to remember their name in the future too, when you use it like multiple times in the first, short period of time of talking to somebody. You don't want to overdo it, obviously, but
yeah, exactly. And I do it now. So if I'm ever at a checkout or a check-in desk, and the person's got a name badge that I can see,
I do it a lot.
I'll always use their name, and it does make a huge difference into how the communication, and it also builds rapport as well.
Sure
and for those of you who are not familiar with rapport, rapport is the process of people like people who are like them. So when they hear their own name, it's like instantly at a psychological level, it's like, I like this person because they know me.
Yeah.
So it's a way to build trust really rapidly as well. So yeah, that was the very first book I read on personal development. And, that's the way a book completely transformed my life. And, since those days, I've read literally hundreds of books and consumed just a massive amount of content. And it's one of the reasons why you and I are recording these podcasts today. It's a passion of mine to share that personal development with other like-minded dads out there.
You said something just now that you've consumed, hundreds of books, and something that I like to get people to think about is you couldn't possibly remember probably even every book that you've read, right? Nor could you remember every concept or idea or thing from those books, but yet all of it has contributed to who you are today. And it's, so the analogy that I like is it's like food. I can't remember I might even struggle to remember what I ate a couple of days ago, right? Maybe even yesterday I might forget what I ate, but yet I need that food. right? And I think in the same way, if we're going to be mentally, cognitively, spiritually growing, we have to constantly be feeding the machine, just like we have to feed our body. So yeah, it's just, I think it's hugely important to consume without necessarily worrying, like, are you always taking something away from it? I don't love every meal that I eat, but I need every meal that I eat pretty much.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, Eric, and it's really interesting what you say that in terms of that consuming and you need to eat stroke read something every day. So it's a really interesting fact that a high population of people, so a very, very high percentage of people beyond, say, high school, never pick up a book again in their entire life.
Yep.
So they're not feeding their brain.
That statistic's been true for since I can remember even paying attention to personal development space. That's been a statistics that's talked about.
No, definitely. So if you were to read just one book a month, beyond high school, one book a month, 12 books a year, and do that year after year, decade after decade, that will set you intellectually in terms of knowledge, experience, insights, and the growth and trajectory of your own life as a result of the information and knowledge that you're consuming and feeding your brain. And it makes set you up probably over 90% higher than a majority of the planet.
And it does a couple of things. It makes you a much more interesting person, and it also allows you to be much more interested in other people. I attribute my ability to stand pretty much in front of anybody and having a somewhat intelligent conversation. I mean, maybe if they're a nanophysicist or something, I'm not gonna be able to hang with that conversation, but for the most part, I could probably find common ground even with a nanophysicist. Just because of the volume of information that I've read over the years. So it allows me to be interested and to be interesting. And that's a characteristic that will carry you a long way in wherever you want to go in life.
Yeah. So in and of itself, there's a big lesson there, Eric, that is worth really highlighting for people. So, if you want to be more interesting, you want to be more charismatic, you want to have more interesting, elegant, fluid conversations with people. Read more books, guys. Read more books.
Hey, and there's another food book analogy here that I just thought of. If you want to be healthy, you have to eat a wide variety of food. Sick people tend to eat about 10 different foods all the time. Healthy people eat far more than that. So when you're thinking about books and just personal development, read some books that are kind of outside of what you would normally maybe be interested in, or things that maybe you're not even interested in at all. And if it's a short enough book, just read it fast, just get through it, but like get the ideas. It'll shake up your brain in ways that you'll be surprised.
Eric, I couldn't agree more. And again, just to interject, big lesson number 2, guys, is often experiences and learnings within the field that you're currently researching or interested in. Often big insights and breakthroughs come from outside of that field. So maybe from another field. I'll give you an example. So, I'm really passionate about neuroscience, fields of hypnosis, psychology, neuro-linguistic programming. And some of those fields, some of the biggest breakthroughs have come from outside of the field, from fields like quantum physics. And you might be thinking, well, what does quantum physics got to do with psychology? You would be surprised. Lesson number 2, often there are learnings and big breakthroughs and insights outside of the field you're in that you can bring back that information. It gives a different spin on the stuff that you already know.
Yeah, and that just talk or kind of speaks to the interconnectedness of everything. Like whatever your worldview is, like I happen to be a Bible believer, and I believe that a God created all this stuff. But even if you believe in the Big Bang Theory and it all came out of chaos, or whatever it is you believe, everything touches everything else in some way. So whatever you do, it's not only going to impact you, it could impact your children, your spouse, and in a positive way, just because you reached outside of your comfort zones or whatever.
So my big book, Eric, was How to Win Friends and Influence People. What about you? What's your book?
Yeah, so I think that because of what I just said, I'm gonna have to go with the Bible. So I'm gonna tell a quick story about that. When I was a young kid, my parents were wealthy and they were really prideful, and they wanted their kids going to private schools. And so I ended up going to this Christian private school. And anyway, not to go into too much detail about that, but when I was 10 or 11, I don't remember exactly, my mom bought me this Bible. And it was this really expensive leather bound Bible with my name, in gold letters on the front and all that. And when I got it, okay, so I was already a reader as a kid, I was naturally inclined to read books. So when I got this thing, I just assumed that you treated it like any other book. So I read that thing front to back in a year. It took me until I was about 25 to realize that most people never actually read the whole Bible. And I was shocked. I was like mentally, I was just kind of like, because I just assumed that's what people did. And they don't. In fact, I've now researched that, less than 10% of Christians ever read the entire Bible. So, but that book, because I kept reading it, I'm actually working on my 26th time through the Bible now. It has absolutely uprooted everything in my life. It's just completely, kind of made me who I am. And so unarguably, the Bible is my number one choice of the book. I do have some other books. Do we want to get into that?
Not just yet, Eric, because I just want to stay on the Bible for now. So
okay, well,
question. Obviously, you and I, we have various conversations. We've recorded quite a lot of podcast episodes. We talk, so I already know. But for the benefit of our audience, how many times have you read the Bible, roughly?
Yeah, so right now I'm working on my 26th time through.
And there we go. And there's the big lesson, the big third takeaway. So let's recap those three takeaways. Number one is you've got to consume information. If you want to grow, you want to expand.
It's like your daily food.
You want to develop yourself. You've got to read more books. Often so lesson number two, often there are great insights and breakthroughs that come from outside of the field you're reading. Yep. So, pick a variety of books, other fields that you might not necessarily think are connected in some way, because as Eric said, everything is interconnected. And the final big third lesson, the most important one for me, is read the great books over and over and over again. Right. Because there is always something new to learn. You will get a different spin, a different perspective. You will learn something different as you read it over and over again that you didn't learn the time before.
Because as you grow and develop, when you read and we're talking about the great books here. We're not talking about like fiction books. I mean, those have their place. But these deeper, complex books, you can read them once, but you're not going to get the true benefit. I mean, I have a lot of Christians, they'll be like, well, I read the Bible once when I was 18, and they're now 30 or 40. And it's like, okay, I mean, good, but it's just not enough. And when you're talking about, these really kind of profound, epic personal development books that are out there, those things are a handful, and so as you grow and develop and you come back and read those things, now you're in a position mentally where you can see and understand things that you just weren't going to understand or see the first time.
Yeah. So you obviously had a book that was possibly on the tip of your tongue. So just before we wrap this episode up, in terms of a book beyond the Bible, Eric, what other book have you got?
Yeah. And honestly, what I'm about to drop on us is probably an episode, but it's a book called World Without Cancer. So I got cancer back in the year 2000 and decided I was going to approach it naturally. And I did, but this book absolutely changed my life. And it led me to a position where I'm not afraid of cancer at all. I often say cancer is easy to beat, which is controversial. But that book, the number one thing that it did for me was it eliminated my fear of cancer. So think about the power of that. Most people, a lot of people at least, walk around and they can't even really say they call it the C word, right? There's so much fear.
Yeah.
So that eliminated like this huge category of fear that people have in the world today. And I don't have that fear because of a book. So it's like, we let in with, talking about what book changed your life. Well, wow. If you could eliminate the fear of cancer, that's huge.
Yeah, brilliant. And that was all in the power of a book. So it's really interesting, Eric. We have a habit of almost like segueing into what's coming next with what we just spoken about. And we're doing it automatically. This is not scripted in any way whatsoever. But a controversial subject is the title of a controversial topic that's coming up next. And what is that, Eric?
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about age is not an issue.
Fantastic. So more on that on the next episode. But in the meantime, how do people reach us, Eric? Where can they find out more information about us?
Super easy. We call ourselves Allied Dads. Add a .com to it, and that's our website. You can find all of our contact info there, and we'd love to have you reach out to us. Hey, if you got something you want us to talk about or explore with you, let us know, and we'd love to do that.
Fantastic. And in the meantime, please subscribe and find us on your favorite streaming channels, whether that's a podcast channel or our YouTube channel. Just hit that subscribe and like button.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening.
See you on the next episode.